everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm back with another book video and I wanted to sit down and just discuss a couple of books that were my favourite in 2019. So if you didn't watch my previous video, like my book video, I did a wrap up of my reading year for 2019 and I read 52 books within the year. But I had a tricky reading year. It was my best that I've ever done. But also looking back, I read a lot of mediocre books and I don't want to say it, but I sort of fell out of love with reading and I forced myself to read books that I wasn't necessarily enjoying just to get my numbers up. Last year was a year of series for me. I really devoured series and got into I would say a new genre. I discovered new adult last year. So young adult is like a really well-known spectrum of books. You can classify anything from like the selection by Kira Cass as YA to, I don't know what's on my shelf, Rochelle Mead Vampire Academy. Like, you've got all those ones that are different, completely different genres by themselves, but they can all be categorized as YA because it's for the younger reader. I discovered new adult this year. Not this year, sorry, last year. Still struggling with the 1920 phase. And it opened my eyes, but because I loved it so much and devoured a series, which I'm going to talk about, which I'm sure you're all going to be aware that it's going to be at the top of my list. I then struggled to read things that were similar or to get into just like a standalone chick lit because I just loved these series that I found. So I think my reading year, the books that I've got to show you are from like the early part of the year, and then everything just dwindled down. But I really wanted to sit down and just do a wrap up of things that I loved. Hopefully I can recommend books to you. You can see my recommendations and then give some back to me, because I'm still on the lookout to like find some good books. If you've got any good series that are low cost on Kindle, please let me know, because when the baby's here and I'm doing a night feed, instead of just scrolling on my phone, I'm going to do a lot of reading on my Kindle. I hope. Probably won't, because I'm going to be shattered, but my hope is to get some reading in as opposed to just being on my phone. So where shall I start? Let's start with I'm going to start with my first book. I think it was my first 5-star of the year last year, and that is Page Toon, The Last Piece of My Heart. I gave this 5 stars, like I just said. I read another 2 of Page Toon's. She's got quite a lot of publications out. She's got more than this out as well. She's got another 3 more out, I think. I ended up reading 3 of her books last year. She is one of my favourite authors. This was my favourite. The other 2 that I read was The Longest Holiday and her new one, which was If You Could Go Anywhere, which I really, looking back on it, was very disappointed and didn't enjoy it at all. This one was great. I'm not going to go into too much detail just because I did a separate book talk on it. I remember sitting down and filming the video because I felt so passionate after reading it. I devoured this book within maybe like a 2-3 day period. I can't remember. I just remember absolutely loving it, and it was really full circle, and I just felt really fulfilled after reading it, which is not what I felt after I read her newest release. This follows the main character called Bridget, and she is a blog writer or a writer of some description, and she is tasked to continue writing. I think it's the second book of like a duology for a woman that died, but for her to like get into the mind space of it, she goes down, is it Cornwall she goes to? Yes, she goes to Cornwall to like picture the scene and stuff, and she meets the widow, the lady that died's husband, Charlie, and it just goes on from there, and it's just a really lovely story, and it touches on difficult topics or subjects like being in the situation of being with a widow, and him having a baby and things like that, and him having to manage that on his own. It's a deep topic, but it's done really well and I really enjoyed it. So if you want a page Toon and you haven't read all of hers, I really recommend this one. Nothing has compared to 5 Years From Now that I read. Oh my god, it'll be 2 years this summer that I read that. But she's such a good author, and the books that I have read this year, like I said, The Longest Holiday and If You Could Go Anywhere, they're not bad books, they just don't compare. They're like mediocre 3 stars, but like I said, my ratings this year, I just had a funny year when it came to like reading and rating books, and I saved my 5 stars for the ones that are great. So Last Piece of My Heart by Paige Toon, I really enjoyed it, and I look back on my reading year and think, no, I really did enjoy that one. And I look at the spine on my shelf and I'm like, you were a good read. So that is my first 5 star. Let's just get this one out of the way, shall we? I feel like I just need to sit and talk about this book that, it sounds silly, but it just changed my life, which I don't think I've ever said that or felt that before. It was just a different league. So this is After by Anna Todd. Very hard to get hold of in the UK. I found out about this, I've spoken about it previously before. At the start of every year, I always do 2020 or whatever the year is, book to movie adaptations, because I like to read books and then watch the film so I can visualise it, see how the story and the script changes, and see what I've read come to life. It's just something that I enjoy. I saw this, watched the trailer and thought, that looks awful and not my type of thing at all. Then I went onto my Kindle, must have been a couple of weeks later, and it went down to 99p, and I was like, well, that's fate, I'm gonna give it a go. It was £1, doesn't matter. I devoured this book in, I want to say it was like a day, maybe a day and a half, and it's just short of 600 pages long. It's not even the best written book ever. Like, it's just one of those, I can't even put it into words. I remember reading it and thinking, I'm too embarrassed to rave about this book because of what it's about, sort of thing. Like, it's really cringy. But then I sat on it for a couple of days and thought, no, you know what, I really need to document my thoughts. And I filmed all 4 book talks for this. This is, if you can hear like snoring noises, that's my cat. This follows a girl called Tessa. She relocates and moves to college. And we follow her story starting college in a new area. She doesn't know anyone. And she meets her roommate, Steph. And her roommate is... like, Tess is very prim and proper, and her roommates are more like edgy, I guess, and she goes to house parties and socialises and meets this whole group of people. She then meets the main lead in this called Hardin, and it's the story of them at college and out of college and what goes on. It's based on like quite a short amount of time. I can't remember exactly, I need to reread it. What is it? I want to say this first book was based in like 3-month time period, and then it obviously gradually develops, and then the last book, if you watch my book talk, you'll know there was a lot of chopping towards the end of like 2 years on, 10 years on, and things like that. It was just an incredible series. The way it's written by Anna Todd is so captivating. You have to know what happens. A lot of it is drama based and not high school, but like college pettiness that as a 26-year-old mum, I don't really care about. But at the same time, I was so invested in the characters and the story because of how it was written. I was like, I have to know how this ends and how this pans out and why she's still going after this guy who in the first book is an arsehole. And it was just insane. I read it along with my friend called Emmy from book club, and we read all 4 books together, and I'd text her at like 11 o'clock at night being like, oh my god, have you finished this book? Do you know what happens at the end? And we'd sit there and I'd just cry. Like, it was just it was so good. Like I said, this is a new adult, so it's a toned down version of 50 Shades. Like, it's not like raunchy and like, what's the word, like, is it fantasy sex and shit like that? It's not like that at all. There are sex scenes within here that are more explicit than what you'd get in this, but it was just incredible. Like I said, it was a 4-book series. So you've got After We Collided, After We Fell, and then After Ever Happy, I think. This is the movie edition, and like I said, they're very hard to get hold of in the UK, so if you have a Kindle, they're expensive for me. They're £3.99 on Kindle a book, but it's so worth it. I just remember reading these and just the book made me feel feels that I didn't think was possible. And I remember, like, I finished, one of them was really tricky to read. It was either book 2 or 3, and I remember messaging Emmy being like, I don't feel like I can continue reading this because I feel so sad as to what's going on with these characters. Like, I love them so much, and to see the pain and the heartbreak and the things that they're going through, I don't think I can read this. But obviously I continued, and it was just the best series I've ever read, and I highly recommend it. I couldn't recommend it enough. They have, like I said, released this on Netflix. Read the books first. The Netflix film, the first one, it doesn't compare. The second is going to come out this year at some point. They got a new director and everything changed. I feel like with the first book, I need to sit down and do a review of the film. I'll do that at some point. Rue, can you please clear your nose? You're snotty at the moment. Yeah, I feel like they tried to tone down this book for the first film to make it do better with a broader audience, whereas I feel like they should have just stuck to the book, and I think they've done that. Dylan Sprouse is in the second one, and I can't wait to see how it turns out. But if you see this on Netflix and think, oh, that's what Jess was talking about, read the book first and then watch the film, because they're two completely different things. I enjoy the casting, I enjoy who they've, like, I enjoy the film as a whole, but it's not this. It's not the feels. So yeah, After, loved. I did read before. I know I get comments all the time on my After videos. I read before, and so many of you have asked me to do a review. I didn't enjoy it, so I haven't done a review, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to reread it. I think I gave it 2 stars. I just didn't really like it, and I don't know whether I read it too soon after this, because I was in a very bad headspace when I finished this series. But the first 4 are incredible, and they're all big. I think this is the smallest one, second maybe 750 and onwards. Like, they are massive books. So that is my gushiness of After done. Here comes the cat. Do you mind? Do you mind? Can you move? Thank you very much. Okay, I've got another series that I started 2018, read the first book, and I guess it's classified as a new adult, like, genre as well. I read the first book and was like, this is quite inappropriate, I don't enjoy it. And then I was at the local library and I found the other 2, because it's a trilogy, it's a 3-book series, and I was like, actually, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. And that is the Dim Early Trilogy by Estelle Masmake. I can never pronounce her name. The first one is Did I Mention I Love You? Yeah. And then in 2019, back to back, in like a 4-day period, I read Did I Mention I Need You and Did I Mention I Miss You. Where do I start with this? So I think you can get all of the books I think you can get like the trilogy for like £4 on Kindle. Really recommend it. And it's basically, it's set where this girl called Eden, she goes to it's either to visit her dad or move back home or move back to see her dad. I can't remember. I think it's to move, or is it the summer? Oh, it's been a year. I've read a lot of books in between. Regardless, she goes to her dad's house, who has remarried, and his partner has 3 boys. One of them is, I think, 2 years older than Eden. Eden is 16 or 18, and then Tyler is either 18 or 20. Technically, they are stepbrother, stepsister, but they've never met, and it's a story of them being sexually attracted to each other, but also being step-siblings and them dealing with that. And when I read the first book, I was like, this is like mentally and like actually wrong, and I couldn't get on board with it. But then I read the second and I saw it in a different light, and I was like, this is really good. Like, it was really well written, and the girl that wrote it, she's young. I think she's younger than me, and she's done really well for herself. And I flew through the second book. So the first book takes place in California. The second book takes place in New York, and I love reading about New York, so that was a nice little aspect. They are a bit younger, I guess, than Anna Todd's After. I feel like that's more, a little bit more grown up and a little bit more explicit, whereas Did I Mention I Love You Trilogy is a little bit more of like a younger reader. But I mean, I read it being 25, 26 and still really enjoyed it, and that's why I'm recommending it. Yeah, and so you had New York, and then the third one, it's really embarrassing because I'm like, oh my god, it's my favourite, one of my favourite books I read this year, but I can't remember. I want to say it takes place in Washington. I don't think it does. Is it Oregon? I think there is a Washington in Oregon. I can't remember. It's like up. I just know it's not where it was before. And they're just really interesting books to read. I really enjoyed them. I wish I did a book talk on them at the time. And I just loved them. I really recommend reading them. I flew through them. Like I said, I think I read the second one in like a day and a half. Like, I absolutely flew through it. And whenever I see them at the library, or I see that they're on offer on Kindle, I'm like, they were good. Like, they were good books. And I always reflect back, like I said about the page Toon, I reflect back and think, actually, you know what, I really like that series and that stands out to me. Whereas some of the other books that I read this year, I couldn't even tell you the main character's name because it just went over my head. Whereas those ones stayed with me. It's tricky. I've got one more standalone which I'm going to talk to you about, and I don't think I did a book talk. I filmed my readathon journey, so if you want to see what I thought about this book, it's in one of my readathons. I can't remember which one. I remember filming and talking about it. In hindsight, I wish I did a book talk. And that is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I'm just on my Goodreads right now. What a book. What a book. It was my first ever Christina Lauren I read. I read it on my Kindle. No, I didn't. Did I? No, I got it from the library, I think. Yeah, I got it from the library. My friend recommended it to me, that's a part of my book club. And it was very page Toon 5 years from now vibes. It was incredible. So like I said, it was my first ever Christina Lauren. I discovered her last year, and it flips from time points of view. So it's about this girl called Macy and this main guy called Elliot, and they were childhood friends. She had was it a summer house next door to his house, and it starts off present day and then it goes back to when she moved, or when they acquired the house after her mum died, and then we go back to present day and then back to the past. So it sounds difficult to read, it's not. So we see her bump into Elliot in present day, and they haven't had contact. I can't remember for how long for, but it's been years since they had contact. And then you see back in the previous, like, how their relationship grew and things like that. And it was just so what's the word, I'm never good at like describing things. It was very, humbling's not the word, wholesome. Yeah, it was wholesome. Like, it it was a beautiful friendship that blossomed through their love of reading and words, and them being there for each other. And she obviously lost her mum and she confided with Elliot, and it was just such a beautiful love story. But something happened in the like past, not past life, but in the old days, that we don't find out about until the end of the book, because they had that massive gap of being friends. And then we see in the present day sort of like how they deal with the situation that happened back then. And it was just really well written. It was such a beautiful book and I absolutely loved it. It was so fulfilling and so full circle, and like I always recommend it. Like when people are like, oh, is this one that good, like the cover looks crap, I'm like, don't worry about the cover, like the book is incredible. And I think at the moment it's like £1.89 on Kindle. It's quite low price, but they are in local libraries, so if you don't have a Kindle and you have access to a library, go and try and get that out. It was just lovely, and I flew through it, and it was one of those books where I couldn't wait to get into bed to read, but at the same time I also didn't want it to finish because it was just such a lovely story. And like I said, it was just really wholesome and nothing too heavy, and it was just lovely. So I really, really recommend that. And then finally, it wouldn't be a surprise, I don't think, I didn't film any of this. I read some really good books this year, but I didn't film any of it. Why did I not? Because I had so many thoughts and feels. I think it's just because this whole situ has been so over talked and overhyped on YouTube that I just didn't really want to give my 2 cents. So, Cassandra Clare. Every bloody booktuber talks about this series. Everyone. And I have had this one on my shelf for... I got it back in the old house. Like, when did this come out? Years ago, like 2007, I think. Like, this is really old. Yeah, 2007. I must have got this 2012, 13. And I read it years ago and thought, what's all the hype about? Like, this is weird. Like, I don't get it. I'm not that interested. I can't be asked to put time into the whole series. So I just put it on my shelf and never really touched it since. Post after, where I didn't know what to do with my life, which sounds dramatic, but if you do go into reading after, just be prepared that after that, once you finish the series, you're not going to know what to read. It's a dark time. I messaged Emmy, and we were having withdrawal symptoms. Like, we did not know what to do with ourselves. Selves. And I was like, let's do it. Like, let's just try this. Because I was, like I said, I had a year of reading series, and Emmy had this on her Kindle, so I didn't reread this because I didn't feel like I needed to. I sort of skim read it just to get like the basic plots, but I vaguely remembered what happened. I don't even really feel like I should sit down and talk about it because so many of you that watch book videos, I'm sure, have heard about this. Cassandra Clare. I've spoken about this before. This is a 6-book series, and originally it was supposed to be 1 through 3 and then it'd be done, and then she wrote the spin-off, or she started to write the spin-off, but then she came back to these characters. This is about a girl, they live in New York, her name's Clary, and even just saying it sounds really cringe because it's so not my type of genre. I read new adult, I read chick lit, I read young adult, I read like lovey-dovey stuff. This is not, it's not that at all. This is really action-packed, fast-paced, and once you are into the world and you understand it, this is the problem that this series has. You have to dedicate the time to, the sun's just gone in, to want to understand it and be involved in it. So she lives in New York, and she basically sees someone get killed by a demon hunter. They're called shadow hunters, and it just sounds awful. It sounds really cringe, but it's so good. So you basically see her witness that, and you shouldn't normally, people like humans don't see that, so she obviously has a gift of some sort, and she joins the people that she saw eventually, called Jace Isabel and Alec, and they teach her this whole different world slash society, sorry I've got reflux, that's going on in and around New York that no one really knows about unless you're part of it. So there are like vampires, there are werewolves, there are demons, and it just sounds awful. But the way it's written and how you feel for the characters, that's what gets you involved, I think. So it consists of City of Bones, this is the first one, City of Ashes and City of Glass. They are 1 to 3. City of Glass is where I really got involved. So City of Ashes is good. This is setting the scene, it's a lot of world building. This is the thing, when you have such a massive franchise that she does now, it doesn't just end at these 6 books. I think she's now, what has she done? 6, 9, 12, 13. I think she's now about to release her 13th book about this world, not these characters. And then she's got spin-offs and stuff as well. Like, it's a massive thing. So yeah, book 1 is just world building and learning like the different phrases for certain things, like Harry Potter, and like learning the spells. It's sort of that sort of thing. Obviously Harry Potter doesn't compare and is never on the scale. I don't know why. Just the bar was so high with that. But this is the sort of one that this one is. And then you've got City of Ashes, which sort of is a refresh and delving a little bit deeper, getting more in touch with like the characters and the development and like who you like, who you don't like, things like that. And more like, not scandal, but scandal at the same time. And then you've got book 3, which is City of Glass, which was just full of action and you didn't know which way to turn, and it was really like epic because it was supposed to be the last. Then, don't quote me on it, I feel like she then wrote Clockwork Angel, which is the Infernal Devices series. So me and Emmy smashed all of these. I think we read these in maybe like a week. They were incredible. This takes place, so again it's the same thing, it's the Shadowhunter world, but it takes place in, was it like the 1800s England? I didn't think I was going to like it because I don't like reading historical books as a whole. But the characters in this is my favourite out of the Cassandras that I've read. Just the characters in this and the twists and the turns. I bawled my eyes out reading this, Clockwork Princess, which is book 3. It was incredible, like incredible. And to get the feels, you have to like read all of them. It was just so good. So this is the Infernal Devices, like I said. This consists of Clockwork Angel book 1, book 2 Clockwork Prince, and book 3 is Clockwork Princess. I got these from the Works. I think they were £10 at the time, and then I also got 20% off, 25% off. And they are beautiful covers. I'm not going to get them all out. But they are just beautiful, and I've kept them in a little box. I did a really good job of displaying those for you there. There we go. Just stunning. Loved it. So once you've read those ones, you can flit in between. You can do whatever you like, but you can flit in between. So you can read like Clockwork Angel and then go to City of Fallen Angels, which is book 4. Then you can read Clockwork Prince and then go to City of Lost Souls. I prefer to start a series and finish it, so I did 1 through 3, all of the Infernal Devices, and then I did 4 through 6. And the rule of thumb, they do say that ideally you need to finish the Clockwork Princess book before you finish City of Heavenly Fire, just so it doesn't you don't get spoiled, because there are a lot of spoilers in this, if that makes sense. So I loved this series. I think the majority of them got, on my scale, it would be a 4.5. It wasn't this for me. This I devoured. It wasn't that, but it was a different league, different genre. So it's hard to to give it the same. So on my scale it was a 4.5. On Goodreads I gave it a 4, but some of the books I gave 5, like Clockwork Princess and Prince I think I gave 5, and City of Heavenly Fire I think I gave that a 5. I can't remember what I gave a 5 and what I gave a 4, but still, like, such a good all-rounder book series. And I am now going to start the Dark Artificers, which is on my shelf. They're like 700-800 pages of book, and they follow a family that were in this. They were in this as well. This is the thing, they all integrate, which is why it's sort of best to read them how I suggested, so you know, because they basically have like family, imagine like a big family tree, and they're all like intertwined. So you have, for example, a family tree of the Herondales, and then you have, try not to give any spoilers. I'm not going to say any, but you have like family lines that would be in one book, and then you'd see the generations later on down the line in a different book, if that makes sense. So it's all like you might be reading about someone's great grandfather or something like that, if that makes sense. It's just all really cleverly written, and once you get past like the whole demon hunter, it's sort of like, I think it's got the stigma that like Twilight's got. Twilight wasn't great, but Vampire Academy was incredible. But I think because it's slightly different, it has that stigma. Just read it, and I can guarantee you will be really happily and pleasantly surprised that you got into it. It's just starting. That's the worst part, is just being like, yeah, I really want to start it, but actually taking time to sit down and read it, that's the hardest part. But once you're in and you're invested and you're having a whale of a time. So they are my favourite reads that I read of 2019. Like I said, towards the end of the year it massively decreased, and I was reading books just to get my number up, which I do not recommend. I hit my goal in August and then set it for another 12, so I hit 40 in August, and I just kept reading books just to get my number up, and it made me fall out of love of reading, and I don't recommend that. If you're on Goodreads and you have a challenge and you're struggling, just lower it. It doesn't matter. It's all in here. So I hope I've given you some good suggestions. If you have anything to suggest, leave them down below. I'd be really interested to hear and read something different or something new. Potentially something I haven't heard about. I don't like crime. I don't like thriller. It's not my bag. I've never tried it, but I get scared at adverts on TV. Like, it's just not my sort of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna go. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.